Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Hing. Welcome to the British Embassy in Tallinn. Please follow me. As I mentioned, my name is Matthew Hing. I am the British Defence Attaché to Estonia. I'm in the British Army, and I will talk about my uniform and a few items on here in a moment. And I've been living in Estonia for about 20 months. So the purpose of this morning really is to answer the question, why do we need a defence attaché? And I'll break that question down a little bit. So what is the we? For me, the we is the UK and Estonia. This is a mutual relationship between both of us, and it's my responsibility on behalf of the UK Ministry of Defence to foster, to build and develop the defence relationship. Now, this is a defence relationship that hasn't just started since I arrived. Really, it's a defence relationship that goes back to 1918. And for those of you, those historians among you, you will have learnt about the Estonian War of Independence, when, on the 12th of December 1918, Royal Naval ships, at the request of Estonia, arrived in the port of Tallinn to help the Estonian forces defeat the Bolsheviks and others who were threatening their newly found independence. Now, that relationship started then and continues today. So, what is a defence attaché? Well, the first thing you probably notice in their uniform is I'm wearing a lot of gold. Now, this thing is called an aiguillette. Aiguillette is a French word that dates from the 16th century, and it basically means little needle. And originally, apparently, it was used to sew suits of armour together to allow flexibility. It then turned, like many things, into a fashion item and is still obviously worn today. Now, this aiguillette is for defence attachés, so I wear it on my left shoulder. And this is the third class. The second class is worn by senior officers and is worn on the right, and there is a first class of aiguillette, and that is worn predominantly by members of the royal family and some other senior military officers as well, also on the right shoulder. So if you see a military officer around wearing an aiguillette, is normally a defence attaché, certainly in Estonia. So what is a defence attaché? Well, I talked about aiguillette, it's a French word, but attaché is also a French word, and it means attached to. So defence, and sometimes known as a military attaché, is a person in the military who is attached to, the French word attaché, to an embassy. In my case, I'm attached to the British Embassy. So what does that mean in reality, in practicalities? It means that whilst I work in the embassy, I am not a member of the British Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, as many of the other members in the embassy are. But I have a role to support Her Majesty's Ambassador in pursuing the UK's interests in Estonia, and I am her defence expert. So my day-to-day business, I worked in supporting the British Ambassador and the rest of the embassy team in delivering the embassy's country goals. But my functional boss, who provides me my military direction, is in London, working in the Ministry of Defence. And in particular, for me and all attachés, we get a letter which direct from our Chief of Defence. So the senior military person in the UK writes to all defence attachés and says, congratulations, you are my defence attaché in this country, and this is what I want you to achieve. So that's quite different. It's a different role than many other military roles, and certainly different from all the roles that I've done before. So, what do I do on a day-to-day basis? So what does defence mean? Let's just take that apart a little bit. So I'm in the army, but defence means that I cover all aspects to do with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and also cyber defence. So I cover everything to do with that. So what does that mean? For example, last year, UK or British Royal Air Force jets were based in Ameri Air Base for 4 months, helping with the enhanced Baltic Air Policing mission, which is a NATO mission. For the Army, there are about 850 UK soldiers based in Tapa as part of the NATO Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group. And also last year, we had, and indeed this year, we have a number of Royal Naval ships out in the Baltic Sea. Also, there is current, ongoing, and detailed cooperation to do with cyber defence between our two nations. So that's a very quick overview, and there's a lot of detail, and if you want to explore any of those in questions, I'm more than happy to cover those with you. So who do I work with? Predominantly, my link is I work for the UK Ministry of Defence, is with your Ministry of Defence. So I have a dedicated desk officer who sits in the Estonian Ministry of Defence, and we speak most days about defence issues, and that's all sorts of things. Currently, we are working together to help with some UK visitors coming into Estonia, because next week is your annual Baltic Conference on Defence. So that is a good example of where we're working together to try and support an Estonian activity with some UK speakers and expertise. But there's a whole range of other stuff. I also work with your Defence Forces headquarters. So again, I have a dedicated desk officer who's for UK defence issues, and again, we speak very regularly, and in order to coordinate, well, partly leads into my role really, what is my role about, and I'll explain that in a minute. In fact, I'll explain that now actually. So what is my role? So why, coming back to the why in the question, why do we have a defence attaché? I've given you some ideas already, but really my role is to understand Estonia, all about Estonian defence, the defence forces, how your Ministry of Defence works, how your defence forces works, their strengths, their weaknesses, and how the UK can support Estonia as a fellow ally within NATO in Estonia, but also how we can work together on operations. So, where are we working together on operations? Well, currently, in several places around the world. The main one, however, is in Afghanistan. So the UK and Estonia forces worked together in Afghanistan some years ago. There was a short break, and then a couple of years ago, again, Estonian forces are working with UK forces in Kabul today. Also, we both have forces in Mali, either working for the French operation there or part of the United Nations mission. So those are just two examples where we are working together on operations as we speak. Also, what else do we do, and what is the other part of my role, is that I have some funding to help with providing subject matter experts, really trainers, to come from the UK to Estonia to deliver military-style courses, but also to support Estonians to go to the UK to attend courses. For example, there is an Estonian officer at the moment in the UK on a staff course. And that's quite a senior course for quite senior military officers to help with their personal and professional development. And there's just a little example of what is going on at the moment. And there are several more planned for this year and next year. So, I've covered the operations. I think I've covered what I do, who I do it with, what a defence attaché is, what defence is, because it's quite a big subject, and why I think there's a requirement. So the last bit I say is, but why me? How do I become a defence attaché? Well, actually, it's we have in other armies run it differently, but within the UK we have no specific education for a defence attaché. It's something that you apply to do. Often it attracts people who are interested in languages, cultures and travel. And so I'm one of those. So I applied to become a defence attaché, and the job that was available at the time I applied happened to be in Estonia. So I am very delighted that my first choice was to become the defence attaché in Estonia, and I was selected for this choice. So that process is a selection process. So I compete with other military officers for this post. Thankfully, I was selected, and I'm delighted to be here. Now, other countries run it slightly differently and have a more professionalised stream. In the UK, we select somebody for the post, and then we do a number of months of training before we join the post. So before I came here, I spent over 3 months in a number of training courses learning about my own Ministry of Defence, and then I could represent it properly, but also provided me with the skills that I would need to become an effective, hopefully, an effective defence attaché. Now, I think that is a very quick run through. I'm just checking my notes here. I think I've covered everything that I had. So really, it's over to you now. I'll be delighted to take any questions. Hopefully, I believe there are some. I'm being nodded at. I believe there are some questions. So there are several. So I'll take these now. And in the meantime, if you have any more, please ask. The first one, why did you decide to become a defence attaché? So I answered that a little bit before, but I'll just expand. I have been in the British Army for almost 30 years, which for those of you watching this, that probably makes me seem like a very, very old man. Certainly probably older than most of your parents. So what? It means that I have a wide range of experience within my own Ministry of Defence, working with other nations, allies and partners across the globe, not just within NATO. So I enjoy travel, I enjoy working with other nations, I enjoy exploring and learning about other languages and cultures. And also I wanted something that was different from the normal job. I didn't join the army to sit in an office and there are plenty of jobs where people who were happy with that. I wanted something that was a little bit different. This job, there is some sitting in the office, but also I spend a lot of my time meeting people in your Ministry of Defence, Defence Forces and Defence Attachés from across NATO and other nations. And that for me is a fascinating and interesting job. So hopefully I've answered that question. The second question we've got here is, what is your most exciting experience in this job? Wow, where to start? I think being part of hosting some of the visits, actually. So another aspect of this job is it attracts a lot of quite senior visitors from the UK. The most senior visitor we've had since I've been here was the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, who came to Estonia in May last year. And she came because she is the colonel of the regiment of the King's Royal Hussars, who were the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group at the time. That, for me, was probably the most interesting visit because I got to sit next to her for dinner the night before and then be part of the party, including with the ambassador and others, that hosted her the visit to Tapa to meet the battle group, to meet the Estonian 1st Brigade. And also, it's the first time I've seen the Princess get into a tank and then drive around your training area with helicopters and explosions and a whole sort of live exercise going on. So that was, for me, probably the most significant event so far. Okay, the next question. What is the most important job task that I do? Yeah, it's a good one. I think a key part of my job, it's about relationships. So I mentioned that part of my job is to understand the Estonian Ministry of Defence and your defence forces, but how do I do that? I do that by talking to people. I do that by reading, I do that by listening. And these are really key skills that do get covered quite well as part of the preparation for this job. But actually, it's especially the listening part is a skill that many people think they have, but until it's really tested, they don't realise whether they're good at it or not. Therefore, I spend a lot of time speaking to, asking questions and listening to members of the Ministry of Defence, Defence Forces and the broader diplomatic community as well. So I think that's probably the most important part of my job and probably the most important skill that really I've had to develop and one that I use every day. This is an easy one for me. Have you been to any army missions? So the easiest way to explain it is to talk through this. So this is my medal ribbon. So I've been to a number of missions and I'll point at them with a pen. It's probably the easiest way. This medal here was United Nations mission in Bosnia. This medal here is United Nations mission in Rwanda. This medal here is from a NATO mission again in Bosnia. This medal here is from Iraq. This medal here is from Afghanistan. And this medal here is from a United Nations mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. While I'm here, I might as well cover the other ones. This medal was given to all members of the armed forces who were serving when the Queen had her golden jubilee, the golden anniversary of when she was crowned. This one is from when she had a diamond anniversary when she was crowned, so the 60-year point. This medal is given to all the services, but this one is particularly for the Army, and it's based on your length of service. And this one at the end is a NATO medal. So this is an award I was given. It's called the NATO Meritorious Service Medal, and that was given for a project that I did in Afghanistan a few years ago. So that's a personal award to me. So there's quite a lot of detail in there. I like that question because there are many years. I said I've been in the Army for 30 years, but actually a number of them have been spent abroad, which actually, as it turns out, is great preparation for being a defence attaché. Sorry, another question has turned up. Has Brexit affected your job? Yeah, very topical, and something that, in addition to COVID, is still in the news and is becoming more and more so in the UK and across Europe as negotiations for a deal at the end of this year continue. Has it affected my job? Actually, no. When the UK has left, but when the deal is done regardless, they will still have a defence attaché here. Why? Because UK and Estonia are close defence partners, but most importantly, we're both members of NATO. So regardless of the UK being in the EU or not, the UK is still a strong supporter of European security, and the best way that we do that, and the way that we're doing that right now today in Estonia, with the troops we have in Tapa, is through the strong alliance, which is NATO. So NATO is it. NATO is the focus and the best way to deliver European security and defence. So that part won't change. So will there be some issues around Brexit? There probably will be, but a lot of them will be, for me anyway, relatively small administrative issues. But in terms of the UK's commitment to European defence, nothing will change. One more question, they're coming in, thank you very much. Have you learned any Estonian examples? Like language, yes. But I must say, it's quite difficult. I have had a number of lessons to learn Estonian. I won't embarrass myself by trying to say anything meaningful beyond tere, aita, palun, and I can almost navigate myself around a menu in a restaurant. So some very basic stuff, but actually I think the really important thing behind this, and for me, was during those language lessons, it wasn't such the language as much, but actually it was the historical and cultural background to the language. So actually, I learnt a lot about Estonian history and culture through the very little bit of the language that I learnt. And actually, for those of you that are interested in language and travelling, actually language is a way of communication, but actually it also gives you an access in to really learn about culture and history. And I think for me, that was the most interesting part of that. Okay. I think we have finished the questions. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed your visit to the British Embassy, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Thank you.